and welcome back to my channel. Some of you already know that I self-publish romance books and fantasy fiction books, but did you also know that today marks the 7th year of the start of my publishing journey? I can't believe it. 7 years ago today, I wrote this book, my first book, The Book of Legend. It was the first instalment of the Prophecies of Fate series. And today what I thought I would do is give you a little bit of background on this book and then maybe finish with a reading of the prologue and the first chapter. I first had the idea of the Book of Legend about 8 or 9 years ago when I was driving past Stonehenge. I do cover, just as a quick aside, I do cover this story in more detail in my previous video called My Author's Journey, which I will link in the cards above. So if you want to go and check out a bit more about that story and more about my author's journey in general, please go and have a look at that video. So yeah, I was driving past Stonehenge, and as I was driving past the stones, I saw this image of this boy who was discovering something in amongst the stones, and I knew that was the start of my story. It was the start of Kai's story that kind of throws him into this whole new world and challenges everything he always thought was true about his life and about the world that he lives in. So it was a really good story to explore. And Kai's one of my favourite characters I've created. He's one of those characters that I was just really able to identify with and to get into the mindset of. So yeah, I really enjoyed writing this story. I always knew when I started this series that it was going to be based on myths or legends. At first I didn't know what kind of myths or legends. It was going to be Greek or Arthurian. They were my two favourite kind of myths and legends growing up. But when I saw this image and through research I saw how easily Stonehenge fitted into Arthurian legend, I knew that was the story I needed to tell. But this story doesn't just follow Kai. This world is not just about Kai. I have a free short story on my website called Fire and Ice, which follows the origin story of Morgan Le Fay, one of the legendary villain of Arthurian legend. So again, if you want to go and check that out, it's on www.tjmayhewauthor.com. I will leave a link to that to my website below, and if you want to go and check out that story, again, please go and check that out. If you're curious about Morgan's origin stories, that would be a great one to read. Enough with the shameless plug-in. I'm going to start reading the book now. So this is The Book of Legend, Prophecies of Fate, Book 1. Prologue. Britain, 539 AD. Life can change in a moment. We can be at our lowest ebb, lost and searching for answers, when suddenly, out of the darkness comes a light. A hero who fights for the good, vanquishing the bad. For us, that hero was Arthur Pendragon, the High King of Britain. His destiny was foretold to me in the stars, just as his father's had been, 2 dragons in the night sky. Under Arthur's reign, Britain was restored to the great nation it had once been under his father, the great Uther Pendragon, before the sea wolves had invaded, taking advantage of Uther's untimely death. Now death has come to this land once more, and the country is mourning the passing of King Arthur, who has left us to reside in Avalon. We are once again facing dark times when it may be easier to change allegiances or to run to save ourselves. But there is hope, for nothing is ever truly lost if we believe there is a solution. Another will come to save us, to lead us, to make us great again, to put down any challenges and right the wrongs that have been done to us. He will be as strong as his father, as compassionate as his mother, and have a heart as brave and true as any of the knights of Britain. His name will be... The man looked up at the sound of harsh voices, brutal in the stillness of the night. Quickly pulling his robes about him, he sat back in the shadows of the stones, at once merging with the darkness around him. He waited, hardly daring to breathe, as the warriors passed by, towering over him as they sat astride their steeds, their fearsome black chainmail momentarily caught in the moonlight. When certain they had gone, the man relaxed. He sighed. Even this sacred place was no longer respected. He needed to hurry back before it was too late. Kneeling down, he finished writing before frantically digging at the earth with his hands, hardly noticing as hidden stones cut his fingers. Finally, he laid the book in its resting place, satisfied no one would find it. Closing his eyes, he held out his hands and murmured words of protection before covering the book with soil. Casting one final ward, he stood and glanced around at his surroundings before clapping his hands and vanishing as if he had never been. Chapter 1. Kai Freeman hated himself. Hated himself for being forced to hide out in the toilets like a scared little boy when he should have been in maths, listening to Mr. Carter's boring monotone as he droned on about algebraic equations. He knew he was going to get a detention for this, but there was nothing on earth that would compel him to leave the safety of the toilet cubicle until he knew for sure the danger outside had passed. But as embarrassed as he was to again find himself hiding in the toilets, he had to admit that ever since he had started at this stupid school, this had been the only safe haven. For some unknown reason, Ethan Nixon didn't feel the need to chase him all the way in, instead contenting himself to prowl the corridor until Kai dared to show his face. And Kai knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that Ethan and his buddies were lurking outside now, waiting. Ever since his first day in Year 7, Ethan, along with his friends Charlie Slater and Aaron Wilson, had had it in for him. At first it started with shoving in the corridor, but soon they had upped the ante, and it wasn't long before they had found other ways to torture him. Not a day went by when he hadn't found his lunch tray accidentally slapped out of his hands, or his PE kit hidden, forcing him to wear one of the reserve kits that Mr. Grayson kept in his office, earning him the sniggers of the rest of the boys in his year. The fact that he couldn't play sports only added to their reasons to persecute him. Whereas they were all members of the football and basketball teams, Kai couldn't even explain the rules, let alone play them. He jumped as his phone vibrated in his pocket. Panicking as he tried to calm his racing heart, he reached into his blazer and pulled it out, sighing when he saw the caller ID. He really didn't need this right now. Reluctantly, he accepted the call and pressed the phone to his ear. Hello? Hey, Kai, you in school? Kai rolled his eyes. Where else would he be at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday? Yes, Greg, I'm in school, he replied with forced patience. I'll make it quick then. I was just phoning to let you know that me and Jules will be going out tonight to get yourself dinner, okay? Kai rubbed his forehead. Yeah, whatever. Great, see you tomorrow then. Kai ended the call and returned the phone to his pocket. His foster parents were cool, but they were enough to drive him crazy at times. Every week they disappeared for a few days to attend some rally or protest, leaving Kai alone to fend for himself. Not that he minded. He preferred that to facing their endless questions about school or listening to their lectures about the latest cause they were fighting. Knowing he couldn't stay in the toilets forever, he picked up his bag, braced himself, and hesitantly unlocked the cubicle door. He shot a wary look around the room, checking he was still alone and that Ethan hadn't snuck in while he had been on the phone. Satisfied, he stepped out, hitching his bag on his shoulder, and caught sight of himself in the mirror. He tried to chase away the fear he saw in his eyes. It wouldn't do to let his tormentors know they had scared him. Walking over to the sink, he splashed cold water on his face, the shock making him catch his breath. After drying his hands and face, he gritted his teeth and took a deep breath. It's now or never, he muttered, running his fingers through his messy blonde hair. He placed a hand on the outer door, psyching himself up. Resisting the urge to retreat back to the stall, he pulled the door open and walked boldly into the corridor, fully prepared to run if he had a chance. But to his surprise, the corridor was empty. Looking around, he realised that his eyes weren't deceiving him. He was alone. Breathing a sigh of relief, he turned, eager to get to class, which, unfortunately, was on the other side of the school and would take a good 5 minutes to reach. Where you going, loser? Kai froze. That voice, the voice that sent cold shivers running down his spine, could only belong to one person, Ethan Nixon. Looking up, he saw Ethan step out from behind a bank of lockers, Charlie Slater by his side. He turned to retreat, but Aaron Wilson now blocked his only way of escape. Where he had sprung from, Kai couldn't say, but he wasn't surprised. It was just his bad luck to find himself surrounded once more. There's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, Ethan taunted menacingly as he slowly approached his cornered prey. Kai took a step backwards, bumping into Aaron, who steadied him in a vice-like grip. Kai swallowed nervously as the other two boys advanced. Maybe it's about time we showed you what happens to people who run from us. What do you say, boys? Although talking to his comrades, Ethan's eyes were firmly fixed on Kai, clearly sizing him up. Aaron sniggered menacingly in Kai's ear, while Charlie slowly nodded in agreement. Kai may not have been able to play sports, but after many years of this kind of torment, he could sure as hell run. Summoning all of his strength, all of his courage, Kai stamped hard on Aaron's foot, eliciting a sharp cry of pain from his captor. As soon as he released his grip, Kai took off and acted solely on instinct and adrenaline, pushed past the other boys, running full pelt towards the stairwell. Oh, you were so going to pay for that, Ethan snarled as he recovered from Kai's surprise attack. But Kai wasn't listening. All he knew for sure was that he needed to put as much distance between himself and the others as possible, because if Ethan caught him, well, it didn't bear thinking about. As he reached the door to the stairwell, Kai risked a backward glance and was greeted by the sight of the 3 boys charging after him, Ethan leading the chase. Despite his head start, they were gaining fast, and by the time Kai was through the door, Ethan was close enough to grab his blazer. As Kai twisted out of his grasp, he felt his foot slip off the top step. His arm flailed as he tried to find something to hold on to, but it was no good. Before he realised what was happening, he was falling through space. So, if you enjoyed that reading, I would love for you to go and check out the Book of Legend and maybe even the rest of the series if you feel so inclined. They're available on all platforms, both in ebook and paperback. Incidentally, the Book of Legend on ebook is completely free everywhere. So yeah, if you want to go and check that out, I will leave the links for those books down below. Don't forget, if you're interested in reading about Morgan Le Fay's story, you can check that out down below as well. The link will be there underneath this video. And if you're interested in learning more about my author journey, you can check out this video here. And until next week, I will be back with a brand new video. Until then, thanks for watching and goodbye.